Hello, everyone. Ex Wallkill Bethelite here. Just getting everything set up. We're going to talk about a group that calls themselves the truth. And I'm going to try to get this set up. It says orientation is locked.
See how this is here?
Yeah.
You have to turn it the other way. I don't know why, but unless, will this work if you hit that button? What is that?
It's going to make it film from the back.
Oh, whoops. All right.
All right, we're just getting the kinks out here. Now I don't want to stop streaming. I'm trying to make
Maybe you
it.
should just restart it.
Why? You want to restart? Because then it'll. I don't know how to do that. All right, we're just working out the kinks here. We got one person in. Let me make sure the chat is set up. And so basically,
Whoa.
what's going on is this thing is showing up real small on my end here, and I don't want it to, for that to be how it actually shows up when you guys see it. But we're getting the live set up so that we can talk about another organization that calls itself the truth.
Mm-hmm.
And there is a lot more. Okay, so there is a lot more commonalities between them and Jehovah's Witnesses than that. So it looks like we're all set because I can look at your phone and see that it's set, even though it's smaller on here. We just got to get all the technical stuff set here. Like we always do. Every time I always do. Every time I do a live, I got to get the technical stuff set up because it's showing up real small on the camera.
I don't know.
But in reality, it's not small. Well, I know how because I had it turned this way and it set it small. Well, when I turn it back the other way, it's still set that same way.
They asked, are they the seventh day now?
No, it's not the Seventh Day Adventists. The Seventh Day Adventists is a group that I think a lot of people were aware of, and a lot of people know that the Seventh Day Adventist, the Adventist movement at least, had an influence on the Jehovah's Witnesses. This is a different group, which is what is so exciting. This is a different group that I don't think a lot of people were aware of, and I don't think a lot of people were aware that they're even more similar to the Jehovah's Witnesses, I think, than the Seventh-day Adventists are. So I'm going to show a couple of videos, and we're going to discuss it as we go through. And of course, we have Serenity here. So we have somebody with, a level of intellect higher than mine. So if you guys like hearing smart people break down information, we've got Serenity here. Now, let me go to the first video. Now, this religious organization is interesting in that they don't really have an official church name. Some people say it's the church without a name, but it is also known as the 2x2s. So let's watch a little video, and I want to make sure you guys can hear it, about an investigation into the sex abuse of this group. The group is known as the 2x2s. Did you know that there was a such cult as the 2x2s? Well, they are very similar to Jehovah's Witnesses. We're going to get into it. They're very similar. All right, let's watch this. We got to go through the commercial first. Is it showing up on there? Go ahead and move it closer. Because I'm worth the investment it takes to earn a degree. You from the ABC 7 the FBI. Hold on. Let me cut it up some more.
New from the ABC 7 News I-Team, the FBI is investigating a religious sect that's facing allegations involving child sex abuse.
Sick. I mean, I'm just broken. Like, I could just cry right now.
The power and control.
We couldn't believe it.
There are so many more layers.
Look at the very bottom where it says the truth behind the truth. Now, don't we as former Jehovah's Witnesses talk about the truth about the truth? Well, these are former members. These are ex-2x2s, you could call them. And they're talking about the truth behind the truth. Now, this thing is wigging out on me. Let me get back to it.
New from the ABC 7 News I-Team.
You'll see it at the bottom.
FBI is investigating a religious sect that's facing allegations involving child sex abuse.
Sick. I mean, I'm just broken. Like, I could just cry right now.
The power and control.
We couldn't believe it.
There are so many more layers to this.
They call themselves 2x2s or the Church with No Name.
And there's a following here in the Bay Area. ABC 7 News I-Team reporter Stephanie Sierra has spent weeks speaking with former members and joins us live tonight to share their stories. Stephanie.
Yes, Alma and Ed, we have a lot to get to. Tonight, you'll get an extensive look into an organization former members say has something to hide. A so-called secret believed to have been swept under the rug for decades, haunting one generation after the next, including families right here in the Bay Area. 72 miles south of San Francisco, in a remote, isolated location of San Martin, there's allegations a dark secret is hiding within this ministry.
Walking in the way of God.
It's a non-denominational Christian religious sect that's been around for more than 100 years.
There's God that cannot lie.
Sometimes called the Church with No Name or the 2x2s by outsiders.
How would you describe this organization? They use fear and manipulation. This organization literally hurts my stomach when I think about
It's a
it.
very persuasive type of religion.
If they didn't talk to God's true people, his chosen ones, then yes, they are going to hell.
I mean, what specifically do they do? You're scared of the world. They make it a scary place to leave. This is where I absolutely blame the truth for all of this.
The 2x2s are often referred today as the truth by its followers. According to the ministry's doctrine, this is the only way to find true salvation.
Do you think they're being truthful? They're not being truthful. No.
Former members say that truth has something to hide.
Sick. Secretive. Sick. I mean, I'm just broken. Like, I could just cry right now. Very harmful.
His type was small-framed brunette girl.
The convicted child molester, and he'd been in our home.
There are so many more layers to this.
In February, the FBI announced it's investigating the ministry and seeking victim information following allegations of child sexual abuse reported across the U.S. The church generally operates inside private homes of members where worship services are held on Wednesdays and Sundays. It was founded by Scottish evangelist William Irvine in the late 1800s. Historical records suggest it wasn't until the early 1900s the ministry set roots in the Bay Area.
They went about in pairs. They call it 2x2. That's where we get the name.
Cherie Kropp, a former member and author of a historical biography on the religious sect, explains the hierarchy. Overseers are at the top, considered to be church leadership. Below them are the ministers or workers that travel in pairs of 2 men or 2 women as they evangelize and preach to members. Below them are the elders and friends that make up the members of the congregation.
The preachers were to be celibate.
These ministers often live in members' homes for a period of time before moving to the next. According to the scripture, it's considered
I
an
keep
honor
saying-
to host them.
So I wanted to let it get past the part where it's talking about the scripture that is based off of. So let's get Serenity in here
Oh.
also. So just like with the Jehovah's Witnesses, their claim to being the one true organization is based off of the scripture where they go off in pairs and go from door to door, essentially. Well, it's the same thing with the 2x2s, but they have a little bit of a different view on it because they also have people that go off in pairs, and those people have much higher importance in the organization that they call the truth, which is the 2x2s, than they do with Jehovah's Witnesses. So Jehovah's Witnesses, just about anybody can pair up, go stand next to a cart, go door to door, so on and so forth. And the 2x2s, the pairs, the two people that go out, those people are of much higher importance. Those people stay at the individual members' homes, and these cults, they believe all you have to do is pick out a portion of the Bible, mimic that. For example, going out 2x2 and staying at people's homes. That's all they did. And bam, you got all these people believing that this particular church is the exact same one, or this group is the exact same one as with the early church back when Jesus was on earth. Just like Jehovah's Witnesses, they believe all they got to do is knock on some doors, and they are the exact same group of people as what was in Jesus' time. Let's get Serenity's view on it.
No, it's just the whole thing about calling themselves the truth. And then they're the only way to salvation because they are the chosen group that is going to survive and everyone else is going to hell. So even the members say they use fear and manipulation tactics in order to keep people in there and even draw them with this basic feeling of them, these people who fall for it, thinking they have the truth. So they're special. So yeah, that in under this guise of Christianity, well, you see what horrific things are done and kept secret.
Yeah, we're going to get into that more so because with these cults, there's a reason why pedophilia runs rampant in cults. In my opinion, this is just my opinion. I'm not the expert on that topic, but in my opinion, pedophilia runs rampant amongst really rich people and in like poor countries around the world. You remember Epstein's Island. These are rich people that have an entire island. You know what I mean? Outside of that, the people outside of the super rich people, the other place we could say that a lot of the pedophiles flock to are cults. Cults, because those are the only two places you can halfway get away with that stuff. If you're super rich and you're off on an island somewhere, on Epstein's Island, or a cult. Now, let's get back to it before this thing cuts itself off. Let's watch a little bit more. So they're calling it the truth. It's been around for over 100 years. This is not something new. This was something that started around the same time Watchtower did. This is what's so interesting about it, because you're going to see so many similarities. Watchtower believes going out in twos. They believe going out in twos. You're going to see so many similarities, and they started around the same time, and that leads me to believe it's a possibility somebody copied off of somebody.
Offshoots.
Yeah, somebody copied off of somebody, because Rutherford, I called him Russellford. Charles Taze Russell, what he set up and what Watchtower is totally different. So where did it come from? Because I don't think Rutherford just came up with it by itself. Some of it, I think he's copying off of these people here. Now let's look into it some more. Let me get this set back up where you guys can see. Can they see everything? All right.
Do you remember workers, if they stayed with us, they would sleep in like our room?
Lynette Burridge Flanagan is a former member who lives in Union City. She says her cousin, Laura Lee Brown, pictured on the left, was sexually abused by another member at the age of 9 until she was 13.
Were their parents aware of this? Was there an effort to report this abuse? No. Why do you think that is? I think that they wanted to keep it a secret because I think that they believe that if you tarnish their perfect way or their perfect will or the only way, then that would look bad on them. Can you walk me through what happened?
Her cousin, Laura Lee, says it's been a nightmare ever since.
My little foot in the slipper. This was about in the middle of the time of the 3 years he was molesting me.
She shared a picture of her alleged perpetrator the night of his engagement to another woman.
He would immediately go back to sexually interacting with me whenever he could. How often would this happen? On a week-to-week basis. It would happen about 2 times a week or more.
Laura Lee says for 3 years, she didn't understand what was going on until 6th grade sex ed class.
And I left the class and went outside, and it was the first time I realized what had happened to me.
She was 13.
My parents were actually told at that time. I couldn't do school.
Laura Lee says she tried reporting it again 4 years later at age 17, but her parents still didn't believe her.
So with my parents, them allowing that to happen, basically, they allowed it. My mom and dad.
Lynette says it's a crooked culture that's been passed through generations.
We do know that there was some abuse of my mom's. It was from her father, and he touched her inappropriately, and she was just like, Dad, like, what are you doing? And he's like, well, I just want to see what kind of girl I raised. I want to make sure. Who does that?
Another former member who grew up in Visalia, south of Fresno, says her father was also a victim of abuse.
What would the world of Formula One feel like without trust? It's essential to have trust in your team, confidence in your car, and a...
Years later, Sherry Autry says she experienced it herself.
My abuse started with a minister. He started grooming me when he was in our field 2 years before the abuse started.
At the age of 13, she says a 28-year-old worker by the name of Steve Rose molested her throughout the duration of his 2-month visit in her home.
From my memory, it happened on a nightly basis. I mean, it was regular.
If you questioned him, tried to report it, what would happen?
You would get gaslit profusely and accused of having a bad spirit or the devil's getting into you. So how dare you question God?
In 1986, Autry wrote a high school research paper.
I gotta stop it there, because just like with Jehovah's Witnesses, questioning these people is the exact same as questioning God. That's something that is unique to a certain extent to cults, more so than with mainstream religion, because with mainstream religion, a person can do more than question the pastor. A question could want to vote the pastor out the church. I've seen it happen with the Baptist church where people were like, yeah, we're ready to vote this pastor out. It's not destroying their faith in God. Like they completely have God separate from the pastor. With Jehovah's Witnesses, the governing body is Jehovah essentially.
Mhm.
Let's get Serenity in here again. The
No,
governing body
yeah,
is
you said it
Jehovah.
well. Basically, they put themselves in the place to speak for Jehovah as well as Jesus. They put themselves in place as the mediator. They just erased Jesus from the scene and said, we're him and we're also God, so don't question us.
Exactly.
Although we're not inspired and we're not infallible. Okay.
Exactly. But the thing is with Jehovah's Witnesses for like over 100 years, they did believe that the governing body was infallible and inspired. So it becomes one of those problems with indoctrination where your mind is essentially programmed to believe something, and anything outside of that original program, even if it's coming from the governing body, they get up and say that they're not inspired or anything like that. Well, you still got people with pictures of the governing body all through their house, and and they believe that if you question them, you're questioning God. Like it went in one ear and out the other. Just like with this group, the 2x2s, somebody says, wow, I've never heard of this group before. Exactly, this is interesting. Just like this group, the 2x2s, when these people are telling their parents that they've been molested, there's a clash. The clash is with what the child is telling the parent, and the clash is also with what they've been indoctrinated to believe. Their brain functions based on the indoctrination. The whole world around them, they process it based off of the indoctrination. So when the child tells them they've been molested, the dangerous thing, the very dangerous thing is that act that the child is telling them has happened can't exist in their brain. They're in their mind. It cannot exist. It can't. You cannot have a really small cult believing it's God's chosen people, that they are amongst God's chosen people, and God's chosen people just molested my daughter. It don't compute. It goes against everything they believe. And I don't just mean in their heart. When you're dealing with a cult, there's something wrong with the brain too. Not just the heart. They hope it's true. In the brain, they 100% don't believe it's a possibility that this is not true. So you have two colliding things that both cannot be true. It can't. You cannot have molestation done by somebody that's chosen by God. The problem now is that the parents, it's as sick as this is, and this is sick, it's more comforting for them to believe the church over their own kid. Because that way they don't have to throw away all their beliefs and what's made them feel comfortable all this time and what makes them feel good at being a part of this organization.
And they have to uphold the reputation of that group.
Yep.
Which is what, she was talking about. We have to keep everything clean and holy and pure.
They don't want to tarnish the name of the group. So let's get into it some more. That was a good point there. Let's get into it some more. Whoops. I'm gonna have to change this back up. I'm like, why am I still in here? In this?
Claiming that Rose repeatedly told her not to tell her parents. She says he promised her, quote, if you ever get pregnant, then I'll marry you. He said what he was doing to me was right. Everyone in the church and public thought he was nice. Now that same year, Rose sent an apology letter to church leadership where he admitted to kissing and touching Autry intimately, saying, quote, "I did not intend to cover this up, but I did not know how to handle it other than to leave the area and beg God to forgive me." Rose denied promising to marry Autry and stated they didn't have sex. Adding in the email, this did not happen with anyone else. Fast forward from 1986 to April of 2023. An email was sent to members about Rose, stating another allegation was made from outside of the state of Minnesota. The ABC7 News I team made multiple calls to Steve Rose to get further comment, but we never heard back. ABC's Kira Phillips was able to track him down in Minneapolis. Here's what he had to say. Steve Rose, Kira Phillips with ABC News. I'd like to ask you about these letters that you wrote Sherry Autry's parents and also your overseer.
Yeah, no comment.
Did you sexually abuse Sherry Autry when she was 14 and you were 28?
No comment.
Your overseer said that what you did was a felony. Do you believe your church protected you from this kind of abuse, protected you from going to jail? Does your church protect sexual predators? Does your church protect the children? We just want to get your side of the story. We want your response to what you wrote. You wrote that you were weak in the flesh. You were weak in the flesh. That's what you wrote. You wrote the.
It was not a secret amongst leadership that he had molested me.
Autry says 6 years later, Rose was out of the ministry, but still leading meetings in his own home. She says she was horrified.
Okay, you do grape juice instead of wine to not tempt an alcoholic, but yet you keep pedophiles in meeting and put children in front of them.
Rose never faced criminal charges in this case, and likely never will. According to the Tulare County DA's office, prosecutors have meticulously reviewed reports and victim accounts in this case and have determined that any potential crime falls outside of California's statute of limitations. We spoke with legal expert and veteran criminal defense attorney Seth Chazen, who specializes in sex crime cases. Is this true?
Yes, it is. Unfortunately, the charges can't be filed in this case due to the running of the statute of limitations.
So just to be clear, do either of these cases have any criminal recourse?
No, charges were not filed prior to the alleged victim's 40th birthday.
According to a well-known anti-sexual violence organization, RAINN, only 7 states have eliminated the statute of limitations for all felony sex crimes. California is not one of them, in part because certain felony sex offenses like rape still has a statute of limitations. We understand state lawmakers have attempted to change this.
Yeah, AB 2295 is simply saying there will be no statute of limitations for any child sexual assault.
But that bill has yet to pass. For now, the only law on the books is one that allows alleged victims who file a claim within 5 years or by age 40 to seek civil damages for childhood sexual assaults that occurred before this year. And both Sherry Autry and Laura Lee Brown say there was a sense of fear that prevented them from reporting their alleged abuse at the time.
And it was just such a symbolization of the power and control.
I don't know how I went through that year.
Decades later, it's unclear who exactly to hold accountable, but we tried to reach current local leadership representing the Bay Area congregation for further comment. We never heard back.
Everyone said it would take years to earn a respected MBA. With WGU, I can graduate.
That's until we located Gary Paul, a veteran worker based in Washington State, North Idaho, and Alaska. He was not involved in any of these cases, but we spoke with him about the broader allegations facing the ministry. He recently visited the South Bay for a special meeting. These meetings only happen on rare scheduled occasions, but they're difficult to track down as the schedules aren't posted publicly, and several were reportedly shut down following pressure from the federal investigation.
They preach the word.
After preaching this Sunday service, Paul agreed to speak with us virtually the following week.
Gary, I've talked with numerous former members who say they have been sexually abused by ministers who were staying in their home at the time. Many of them say it went on for years. What's your response after hearing that?
Well, I never saw it. And knowing the, quote, church leadership, I find that very difficult to believe.
Nonprofit Advocates for the Truth, an organization dedicated to helping survivors across the world, says it's received reports on more than 900 alleged perpetrators that have been identified by a hotline worldwide. The organization says there are more than 1,500 alleged victims who've reached out for help since its inception in March last year. Autry is the former president and co-founder.
The FBI is now investigating your church. How do you feel about that?
Well, I don't think it's necessary, but they're doing it, so that's fine.
And you don't think it's necessary? Why?
Because I don't think that there is a cult trying to hide things.
There are hundreds of alleged victims that have come out indicating they were abused at one point or another. Because the allegations were made, don't you think it's important an investigation is done to fully vet what happened?
I suppose it would be.
After 57 years in the ministry, Paul says he never dealt with a child sexual assault case, nor received formal training on how to respond to such allegations until after the federal investigation began.
Just to be clear, is that training voluntary or required now?
Voluntary.
Don't you think it should be required?
I don't think it should be required.
Would you consider this ministry to be secretive?
No, we're definitely not.
But some of those who grew up in it disagree. Is there a culture within this religious sect that encourages sweeping things under the rug?
Uncomfortable topics are swept under the rug.
Ex-member Michael Day says he experienced.
I just have to mention that I don't think that, what is that, ABC News?
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that they fully understand what they're dealing with when they're dealing with cults. Is there some culture where you're supposed to sweep things under the rug? You don't understand. The 2x2s and Jehovah's Witnesses are the same. They both believe that everything outside of their organization is quote unquote the world, and the world is not to be trusted. So no, they're not going to go to the police. The police are the world. The world is under the power of the devil. So most of these situations are going to be handled behind closed doors. And of course, neither Jehovah's Witnesses nor the 2x2s, they don't have prisons where they put people in. But the only thing they'd be able to do is give some sort of church discipline, and that's it. It's not going to occur to them to call the world on one of their own members, which they believe to be a part of the one true religion that's being led by God, or the person themselves being selected by God. It doesn't compute. It makes no sense at all from the standpoint of a cult member. That's why this is so dangerous. Epstein, like rich people that go off on islands somewhere, are more likely to be reported to police than people inside cults, because the entire concept doesn't even
and
compute.
They're protected by the religious status that we're paying for. We pay taxes to protect criminals, essentially. Like, really. And the one guy said, I don't believe it because, I didn't see it. How disconnected do you have to be? That reminds me of the 2-witness rule. This church leader basically says these things can't really be serious because I've never witnessed it myself. Really? Okay.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. So I just wanted to stop it there because they're talking about, is there some culture that covers it up? Yeah, yes. The entire freaking concept is to cover it up.
Cover it up, hide it.
The whole freaking concept.
Don't tarnish our reputation.
And it's so bad that the cult doesn't even, Jehovah's Witnesses or 2x2s, I'm pretty sure the cult members wouldn't even think about it as a cover-up. They would think about it as this is their normal. way of dealing with things. Not go to the police, go to somebody in your church, because a Baptist person would go to the cops. A Catholic, believe it or not, most likely would go to the cops. Most mainstream religions will go to the cops. A cult, a cult is not going to go to the cops because they relate their organization with God himself. Their religion, they're the people who make up the structure of their organization is God. You don't call the cops on God. That's why cults are dangerous. And Serenity brought up a great point about them being tax exempt. Religion being tax exempt, you could debate that. A cult should not exist, let alone be tax exempt. In America, there's like no difference between, they let cults exist along with religions. Cults are extremely dangerous, extremely dangerous. In Russia, that government has figured out, yeah, we can have religions, but we cannot have just complete cracked out religious people in cults. Extremists. We can't have extremists. In America and some places in the West, let them run wild. Let them believe whatever. The problem is now you have beliefs that are extreme. Our organization really is chosen by God. All these people really are chosen by God. If you have that belief, which it is legal in America to have, you can't also at the same time have members who've been chosen by God molesting people. It doesn't make sense. So when she's talking to this man about it, he can't fathom it. He said the church leadership that I know, as in other words, his religion, there's no way. It's impossible. It doesn't compute. So that's why it's dangerous, because in cults, pedophilia for the members, it can't exist, although it does. So let's get back to it.
And hello, everyone. Hi, Tammy. Hi, Cassandra. Hi, who else? Michael, Yasol Baro. Hello, everyone. All right.
It's that firsthand. He grew up in the religious sect with his cousin, John Vandenberg, a Hayward native.
It was shocking. He was on a missionary trip. When he was coming back, he was kicked out. He was molesting people, inappropriate touching of girls in the Philippines and one in Mexico. But this hearsay, I don't know.
Vandenberg died in March this year. Nearly a year before, this email was sent out from a regional leader in the ministry, reporting Vandenberg was the subject of several credible allegations of unacceptable sexual behavior, including a complaint of inappropriate touching of a minor, which was reported to the authorities.
I feel really bad, especially if they feel violated.
Day says he had 35 ministers or workers stay at his home growing up.
And one of them, who John knew, and we knew, stayed in our home and was later came out as a convicted child molester.
In the years that followed, Day says he grew out of the faith and was displeased with what he called the hypocrisy.
I would hear that there are no rules. We have no rules. No, there's rules galore.
A lot of man-made rules.
There are absolutely rules, and none of them are written down.
There's no jewelry.
Other than a wedding ring, basically no makeup.
TV, you must have long hair. You had to wear it pinned up on your head.
Wearing just very conservative clothes, like really dresses.
And no slacks or shorts.
What happens if you wear pants? You would be looked at like up and down, like, what are you wearing? Like, why are you wearing pants?
There was one woman who had to confirm that she'd thrown away all her makeup and would not wear it again.
We asked Paul about that. He denied any rules about makeup.
What about wearing pants to Sunday service?
I don't feel that's very womanly. What the scripture says is the woman should not wear what pertains to a man.
They don't call it the witching hour.
There we go with that again. They gotta get 8 million commercials in this bad boy.
The past.
Not womanly to wear pants nor go to college, according to Laura Lee Brown. She says she wanted to be an attorney, but was told by the ministry.
That's too worldly. We don't think you should do that.
A religion with a strong set of rules that preaches they are destined to find the truth or the one true way. But questions linger as to who's really being honest.
We were told that the way is perfect, but the people are not.
But some former members argue the way is far from perfect.
There's no accountability when you go and try to talk to them about it. There's a cover. They'll just ignore you. They'll deny it.
Some former members believe there should be rules in place prohibiting ministers from staying in people's homes, arguing that it would protect innocent children from potentially being exposed to predatory behavior. Do you agree with that?
No, nowhere in the scripture does that support that. And in the multitude of years that I've been in it, it's never been a problem.
How do you know it hasn't been a problem?
It's never been a problem that I'm aware of. Obviously, it could have been, but I wasn't aware of it.
Just because you weren't aware of it. Well, don't you see value in protecting future generations, given what has already been publicly revealed?
I think it would affect the quality of our ministry. We've always stayed in the homes of God's people. Staying in a home makes you very vulnerable. It's true that the children in the family home are vulnerable also, but that's the way that the fellowship has been established.
From your perspective, what do you think it will take to see real change from all this?
Well, I don't like the word change, because there's a lot of things about the fellowship that cannot change.
And that's the point. That's the point.
Yep.
I mean, we're basically at the end of it. That is the whole entire point as to why cults are so dangerous. The man flat out said it. We can't change this.
There's some things we cannot change.
By some things, what we're talking about is this in particular.
Who said that? It was
They
one
can't
of the
change
governing
it.
body members who said, we will not change. Was that Tony Morris?
I think that was the guy that went to that was interviewed at the Australian Royal Commission, where they were asking him, well, can't you have women talk to me? Wow.
I think it was somebody that said it.
But yeah, so he just nailed it. A cult cannot change. If they were to change, it's different from the Baptist church or the Catholic church. The Catholic Church, once you had the sexual assaults and things like that going on there, that once it became well known, they got all kinds of stuff that they set up now. The thing is that you have Catholics who are capable of both being Catholic and using the majority of their brain, whatever functionality of their brain that they have, they can use it. With Jehovah's Witnesses, and apparently most other cults, you have the cult is running 90% of your brain. You can't think outside of that. So they can't change it. They can't, because the members are already set to believe the reason why we are God's chosen people is because we have everything set up a certain way, and that correlates exactly with what the Bible says. If they were to change anything about having people stay in other people's homes, the people whose homes they're staying in believe these people are chosen by God and couldn't do nothing wrong, so of course they're not going to watch them around their kids or anything like that. They can't change that. So essentially they have to let it run rampant.
They save money that way too. I mean, let's
be
honest.
Yeah, they save money, but the whole concept is with a cult is they really believe, without a shadow of a doubt, that their organization is directly connected with God in the sense that the leadership is darn near God themselves. They can't change that. If they change that, they'll lose members. People will wake up. But wait a minute. Well, you mean we can change things? Now, the issue also is with this pedophilia thing. So the concept with that is adults doing things to children. Now, the 2x2s and Jehovah's Witnesses both have, I guess you could say, some protection set up against things that are in the Bible, such as what they would call, let's say somebody sleeping with somebody else's wife. They understand that that exists because it's in the Bible, right?
Yeah, but he
So-
also mentioned about the woman wearing skirts because they need to be, dressed a certain way.
Right, but see the point I'm bringing up is that Jehovah's Witnesses don't protect against pedophilia.
No.
The 2x2s don't protect against pedophilia. I'm breaking down the reason why. The reason why is pedophilia ain't in the Bible to a certain extent. Like, Jehovah's Witnesses are not going to have some guy go out and be alone with another person's wife. They would have a problem with that. It's in the Bible not to do certain things like that, right? Right? Is there a such thing as, what do they call it? Sleeping with somebody you're not supposed to sleep with.
Adultery is one
Adultery.
thing, but I don't remember a specific thing saying don't be alone with another.
Well, you don't remember being a Jehovah's Witness and not being allowed to.
No, I'm saying from the Bible. I know from what they taught. They used to say don't be alone in the company of the opposite sex because, for some reason you
Right.
jump each other.
They
all
get
of a
that.
sudden.
They get that from. They get that based off of the concept in the Bible that a person who is in certain situations would be tempted to do certain things. So essentially, the whole point that I'm bringing out is adults doing things that certain things together. The Bible speaks against that. So Jehovah's Witnesses know to protect against it, right? Immorality and what do you call it? Fornication. Jehovah's Witnesses are darn near obsessed with fornication. They are freaking darn near obsessed with it because it exists in the Bible. For a cult, if it don't exist in the Bible, they can't change it. They can't do nothing about it. You can correct me here in the chat if I'm wrong, but is pedophilia in specific, is there any scripture in the Bible where it's like a letter to the Corinthians or a letter to the Philippians, thou shalt not have these adults touching these children in an inappropriate manner? If there was a such thing as that in the Bible, if it specifically said that, oh man, Jehovah's Witnesses would be obsessed with that too. No one would be around their kids.
They're Jehovah's Witnesses for a reason. Jehovah gave the commandments in the Hebrew scriptures basically to take young girls after slaughtering the mothers, the sons, and the husbands for themselves. You don't remember that? Take
Of
all
course
the
I remember
virgins
that.
for yourselves.
So-
These are kids.
so
So
you're-
Jehovah is actually behind this type of behavior, if you really want to be honest. So if they're those his witnesses, okay, why would you think that wouldn't be kind of a secretive undercurrent of the cult itself?
That is true. That is true, actually. That when you're talking about the Old Testament, you can definitely make the argument that
What do you
pedophilia.
think they were doing with those virgin youth girls when they took them? I mean, seriously. So I
moving
know
back so we can zoom in.
people don't like to hear it because they are, ooh, Jehovah God, this and that. Okay, if that's your God and you're his witnesses, why do you think you're not going to imitate those behaviors as well?
Well, it's I agree with that. And then also too, when you go from the Old Testament all the way into the New Testament, you don't have anything that counters that. You don't have anything that tells, because a cult member is not going to have the same mental brain function as a person in mainstream religion. A person in mainstream religion is like, whether the Bible says so or not, we're going to protect against such and such and such.
Right.
So you ain't going to just walk up into no Baptist church and talk about somebody's kid, talking about, let me take little Timmy on a fishing trip.
Mm-hmm.
You ain't going to do that. Ain't nobody that dumb enough to do that in no regular church. But a cult, if it ain't in the Bible, they don't even know to protect against it, and they can't change what they have set up to a certain extent, because these people are believing that that's the reason why they're chosen, is based off of them doing everything exactly how the Bible says and not adding stuff. Although they've admitted that the 2x2 group has rules that aren't in the Bible, because their leadership can make rules and people just follow it. They just follow whatever the leaders say, just like Jehovah's Witnesses will have people doing things that aren't in the Bible, such as either not having beers or having beers, based off the leadership just telling them to do it. But if there's no specific scripture that says don't touch little kids in the New Testament anywhere, Jehovah's Witnesses do not have, cult members do not have the common sense. They're not using common sense. They're only using indoctrination. Their brain is functioning primarily off indoctrination, not common sense, right?
What to think, and they're said,
Exactly.
they encourage you, don't rely or lean on your own understandings. In other words, don't think for yourselves, let us do it. So they're after years of that, they're mentally handicapped at that point. They don't even know.
So they don't know to protect
what's right, what's wrong. All they think about is the well-being of the cult itself.
Yeah, that's true. And they don't think to protect against pedophilia, because there ain't no particular scripture and no watchtower that they done underlined and talked about at a Sunday meeting. Just like if I were to go and hug up on somebody else's wife at the hall, people would kind of be looking at me like, what the heck are you doing? You got people going up and hugging up on other people's kids, and they don't know to think nothing different, because there's no freaking watchtower saying that that's wrong. The stuff is insane, and this is legal. This activity is legal. So when you're talking about a group like the 2x2s, there's another video that we won't get into now. We might get into it later. But there's another video on YouTube where they are bringing up the size of the cult. They're like, why are there so many either pedophiles or so much pedophilia going on in such a small group? Common sense. Common sense. If you have a group of houses, let's say on a block. Now, obviously, Serenity's illustrations are probably better than mine. But this is my way of breaking it down.
I'm just excited as you all to hear what he's going to say.
This is my way of breaking it down. This is my way of breaking it down. So if you have a group of houses on the block, one of those houses are uninhabited. What is the likelihood that, and this is a small house that's uninhabited, all the roaches that are in the whole surrounding area are all going to congregate in that one abandoned house, no matter how small it is, because all the other houses have protections against roaches. If they're in any other house, people are going to spray them. They're going to kill them. They're going to try to stop them. Those roaches are going to be all over. When me and Serenity were looking at houses, some of those empty houses, oh my lands. We couldn't get in the freaking house because there are roaches everywhere. We didn't want to go in them.
Because they were vacant for like months because the housing
So
market.
where else are all the roaches going to
It
go?
was ridiculous.
They're going to go somewhere
Where there's no threat.
There's no threat. Ain't nobody trying to stop them. So where else are all the pedophiles going to go? If you're not rich and you can't have your own island like Epstein, where you just fly rich people to the... If you're not rich...
Go somewhere.
Where are you going to go? You're going to go somewhere where there's no protections against you. These people in these cults don't freaking believe you can possibly exist. They can't have pedophiles. It's not in the Bible. There's nothing telling them to protect against it because they ain't got no common sense. It's not me just joking saying they ain't got no common sense. They literally don't have common sense to think outside of the box. So if their church or organization ain't telling them, look out for pedophiles, they're not going to. So every pedophile in the whole freaking region, why wouldn't they all be in these particular groups who don't particularly protect against them or
report them to the authorities,
or report them or anything?
Have any,
because pedophilia
thing in place to protect the kids, as the news interviewer was saying. Don't you think now that you should do something to protect the children? So his way of rationalizing that was to deny that there was even a problem. And he's like, well, I don't know, so therefore it does not exist. Really? So if you bury your head in the sand and claim that you are clueless, that makes everything okay.
Well, in the West, I can't speak for other places, but in the West, this is again. Was that Serena yelling in my ear? No. In the West, pedophilia is probably, it's cracked down on more than freaking any other. It is in the West. Pedophilia is the worst thing in in our freaking society. As far as the way we gauge things, it's like above murder in the sense of being worse. So in our society, pedophilia is like the worst possible thing a human being can possibly humanly do. So of course, you're going to have a big influx of pedophilia in these cultures in our society where they ain't got to go far. All they got to go is to the Kingdom Hall. In these cultures where people don't even know to look for them. They go from being the slime of the earth to a ministerial servant or an elder, or maybe even or pioneer, maybe even a governing body member. So of course, all the pedophiles in the whole freaking everywhere are going to flood to these cults. Just to prove my point. Which one of these is shorter?
This is the shortest one.
Just to prove my point.
Most views, but it's.
Let me just prove my point about why do so many pedophiles go to cults? Because in our society, they're viewed as the worst of the worst. In cults, they're viewed as chosen by God, and they don't have anybody stopping them from their activities. Hold on, let me get to this part. Watch this. This proves my point. What happened to it?
You just backed out of it.
All right, hold on. Let me get my point back up here. You would think it would fill it in since I just had it up there.
It's like, we don't want you to see this.
I know, right? Don't have Marcus's point proven. And it's going to start with a commercial.
I think we're in an Airheads commercial. Want to skip it?
There are about 800,000 registered sex offenders in the United States. Their victims carry that trauma for life. But is there a solution to stop it before it happens? Tonight, we want to focus on those sex offenders and the search for solutions. We take you to a place in the center of St. Pete dubbed Pervert Park, a trailer park that only houses convicted sex offenders.
Exposed her to some things that she should not have been exposed to.
Bill Fury is a registered Pinellas County sex offender. His crime, sexually abusing his girlfriend's 13-year-old daughter 25 years ago.
I had this fetish, obsession, compulsion, whatever you want to call it, with women's underwear. And I was wrapped up in that one night when my girlfriend's daughter came into the room.
Fury says he was touching himself when she walked in, and he didn't stop. After serving time in prison for his crime, he moved here to the Palace Mobile Home Park in St. Pete, first sharing his story publicly in a documentary called Pervert Park. He says he was molested as a child by several people, parents, and babysitters. But he says that's no excuse for what he did. Bill now runs this park that's home to about 120 registered sex offenders, convicted rapists, child sex abusers, and child pornography addicts.
It absolutely works because it keeps us concentrated. It keeps all the sex offenders in one area so they're easier to watch for law enforcement, for probation. But more importantly, sex offenders can police each other. We know how we think. We know what warning signs to look for. We know what triggers are, and we can keep an eye on each other.
Where does this...
Let me just, because they're, my point is to show, I don't know if you guys even knew that there was a such thing as whole mobile home parks of nothing but pedophiles, essentially. You don't have mobile home parks with nothing but murderers. You don't have mobile home parks with nothing but scammers or thieves. You only have in our society mobile home parks if you just are concentrating one criminal group in one place. They don't even do that with gangs. Only pedophiles. So that proves my point, because the reason for that, in my opinion, is that when a murderer gets out of prison, it may take a long time, but if a murderer gets out of prison, they live wherever they want to, right? If they can afford it, they live wherever they want to. If a thief gets out of prison, if any crime you can think of, correct me if I'm wrong, once they get out of prison, they're out. They can pretty much do what they want, other than being a felon and not being able to carry a gun or something to that effect, but they live wherever they want. If a person was a pedophile, it don't matter that they out of prison. It don't matter how many years they was in prison. You can't live next to no schools. You can't live next to no parks.
I think
there's some places
you have to register.
You got to register. So there's some places that are gonna be like, no, not here. You know what I mean? You ain't coming here, right? Because there's so many. I'm sure apartments,
parks,
apartment complexes, and stuff like that where they can say no. They can tell you no. So once they find that stuff out, they're like, yeah, no, you ain't living here. So these people are looked at in a manner where they're more dangerous in the eyes of society than killers are. So this is to prove my point. This view carries on into mainstream churches. A Baptist church is not going to think no different. They're not going to want nobody that's a pedophile sitting next to their kids at no pew in the church. They ain't going to want one outside where their kids are playing. Some churches have got playgrounds. They ain't going to want one outside where their kids are playing in the playground. So for a pedophile, when you're really wanting to answer the question, why do so many of them flock to these cults? Why there's so many pedophiles just within Jehovah's Witnesses? Look at it. Okay, so you're viewed as the worst of the worst everywhere but the cult. But the cult, so a person who lives in pedophile mobile home park, can be an elder amongst Jehovah's Witnesses and preside over a congregation and be looked up to. Am I making this up, or is that's the truth? Jehovah's Witnesses are not going to background check. They're not going to ask if where you live. They're not going to ask if you're on a registry. They're not even going to look.
They're just glad to have another body.
They're glad to have another member. So of course, it's common sense. Channel 7, what was it, ABC or Channel 7?
ABC 7.
Yeah, ABC News, and people don't understand that. Pedophiles in the West, probably not just America, but other countries also. That's the worst of the worst of the worst. Don't nobody want you by them. In no church, nowhere. If you are a pedophile and you go to a grocery store, I don't even know how they can go to grocery stores because they're not supposed to be within range of children. So if you're a pedophile and you go to a grocery store and there's a kid in the grocery store and somebody sees you and recognizes who you are and they call, you in trouble because your PO is going to be like, dude, you ain't supposed to be nowhere near kids. If you see kids, you leave the freaking grocery store. Like, freaking, you could kill 30 people, and if you get out, you ain't got to do all that. So this is proving my point. That's all I want to do is prove my point. That if society looks down on a group of people to that extent, and a cult, that type of view doesn't even exist. You walk inside the Kingdom Hall, you are the best of the best. You're chosen by God. And you could be around all the kids you want. Probably the same with the 2x2s, that group. Of course. That's why I got to drink so much. I get to coughing. Of course you're going to have a high concentration of pedophilia or pedophiles inside of a cult. That's where they're going to all flock to. That's one of the reasons why cults are so dangerous. That's one of the reasons why we have to keep speaking out about them, because in America, freedom of religion means total freedom of religion. In the sense that you can teach everything, even if it promotes a culture where people aren't even protecting against pedophiles, because according to their belief, this freaking stuff can't exist in my church. It can't.
And I mean, they have that whole what is it? You know, I'm usually in bed at this time.
What time is it?
9:37.
Ooh, it's definitely bedtime.
So they have that protection where they don't have to basically tell confessions and all that. They have some, I forgot what it's called. I can't think of the name. Basically, they're protected from having to report because it's some
like the Catholic Church
has confidentiality thing, something like that. So
the Catholic Church
like,
is the same.
what are y'all doing? Like,
if you confess to a priest, I don't think the priest has to tell the police. Is that what the law is?
Something like that, yeah. It's one thing where it's there's a difference between just a crime is a crime. That's what I want to say. Period. Yeah. A crime is a crime. It should not be protected because of you having religious status. Period. Or none of these. And guess what? None of these would be in existence. Period.
You said none of what would be in existence?
Cults and religions who are hiding so much stuff. Not just pedophilia, but other things as well. Yeah. Yeah, but that's the problem that we're faced with. Is in regular society, pedophilia is definitely cracked down on. But within cults, because they have complete freedom of religion, and they ain't got to teach their members to crack down on this stuff. They don't have to teach their members that to even
Like their members don't have the common sense outside of what they're taught. So if they're not teaching anything, then in these cults, that stuff is not even looked at. Like it's not cracked down on at all. That stuff. If a person doesn't know to look for that, then you got all kinds of stuff that's not really appropriate going on. I remember a lot of that stuff at the hall, where people would drop their kids off for field service, and maybe the parents got to go to work or whatever, but they want their kids to pioneer, so they drop their kids off at the hall, leave them, and then those kids go off with whoever for the whole day with whoever is going out in quote unquote field service, knocking on doors that day. Like this stuff is insane and it's not going anywhere. That's why people who have nobody should be going back to that cult, especially people who have children. If you freaking have children, why on earth would you go back, even though your family might be pressuring you, just for the sake of your children? Why on earth would you go back to a cult and you know that is filled with pedophiles? Just like you ain't gonna go in my wonderful illustration about the one house that had all the roaches in it. You ain't going into that house for no reason at all. Dead roaches everywhere, like living ones in there everywhere. We saw them. They were everywhere. You ain't going in that house, period. So why on earth would you go back to the Kingdom Hall when now I have explained, hopefully, to where it makes sense, that all the pedophiles are going to be in the Kingdom Hall because they're not looked down on there, whereas they're looked down on everywhere else because kids are freaking everywhere. So that means they have to be watched everywhere else. He's talking about it's easier for the cops to keep up with them. I don't even know if these people could go to different states.
You have to register no matter where you move.
So if they try to leave, or yeah, maybe they can leave, but they have to register where they go. But I've seen situations where these people get arrested just for going someplace different. And they're like, no, we got to watch y'all. So, I mean, yeah.
That's the one good thing about the way the system is set up. Because
if we believe that pedophiles are the worst of the worst, and we do, I'm talking about our culture, the entire West, from my understanding, and maybe even cultures,
at least decent people.
Maybe even Islamic, maybe even Islamic countries believe it also. If the majority of the world believes that pedophiles are the worst of the worst, then you have to get rid of cults. You can't believe that pedophiles are the worst of the worst and make it legal for people to establish religions where they're not the worst of the worst. They're God's chosen people and they can be around kids if they want. You can't have the two. So you can't have Jehovah's Witnesses and at the same time say pedophiles are the worst of the worst. Well, then you can't have, you know what I mean? It's like setting up a roach motel. Nobody likes roaches, but we're going to make it okay for somebody to set up a whole 5-star hotel with stuff that roaches love and just let them run loose and just roaches everywhere. It makes no sense. So
it makes sense because they're going to pretend the roaches don't exist.
That's exactly right. They're going to pretend the pedophiles don't exist.
And then
they're not going to change it.
Who spoke out just like us, once you leave and you realize what's going on, you speak out about it.
Yep.
And what they're going to do is say, no, you're lying. That's not the truth because we didn't see it. Nope.
It's 2024.
They're just bitter. They're just this. They're just that. And it's like, really?
It's 2024. So if these cults have yet, they've been around for over 100 years. If these cults have yet to say, okay, we're going to start putting some stuff in to make sure we're teaching members not to have their kids around the members of our own church, they're never going to. So it means that's never going to change. So that means America's view that freedom of religion, that ain't never going to change. It's not going to change. Freedom of religion in America is huge. It's not going to change. Pedophiles thriving in cults. Those two aren't going to change. So essentially,
I say it will.
you can't have cults. You cannot have cults. You can't have them because there's no way you can't keep the pedophiles out of them. It's impossible. It's literally impossible. Serenity's got a view on it. We're gonna get to that view, but
I'm going to bed soon. I'm sorry.
all right. Well, we're gonna have to close it down. But yeah, if you have in America freedom of religion, and that results in cults, and then the cults are going to just let pedophiles run rampant, which they have to because a man said we can't change it. We can't change it. Because people believe that change is wrong, so they can't change it. So that means in America, from my understanding, there'll never not be a time when pedophiles just run free in churches where they're viewed as horrible anywhere else. So then that means we cannot go back to the freaking cult, especially if you have kids. That's freaking child abuse. If you have kids and you take them to a cult, you might as well take your kids, put them in the van, and drive them to pedophile park, the mobile park for pedophiles. You might as well drive them to pedophile park if you're taking them to the Kingdom Hall. There's no difference. So it's literally, in my opinion, that's child abuse. If you take your kids to the Kingdom Hall, it's freaking child abuse. It is. It's child abuse, not just from the horrible things they're being taught and the horrible way they're being treated, but you're deliberately putting them in harm's way. So that's my view. You want to finish up with anything before we conclude? Because it's bedtime.
I was going to try and get to some of the comments, but
you can bring out some comments if you like.
Okay, here's one where okay, we talked about, it was Anthony Morris that said they wouldn't change, but look at all the changes JWs have made, the governing body.
Including Anthony Morris.
And if that, yeah.
I even got rid of him.
Because he said we won't change, and they're like, well, you're out of here because you're going to be a problem. But yeah, he said that. And that's the thing. With all these changes, at this point, the majority of ones who still have some common sense should get out and be like, this is not the truth at this point. Y'all have just been making us doing stuff because it was your own rules. It was never in the Bible. And y'all should have known this if you're inspired, really, which they said they aren't. But if you're supposed to be speaking from, on behalf of God, you should at least get these things right. But they're still there, just like their brains are gone. Someone said NPCs. What is that? They use it in video
NPCs
games.
are the people in a video game that's not the main character.
Okay, so
they're just part of the game, essentially. So
okay.
Somebody says they'll find the scriptures where God condones pedophilia. Most likely that would be in the Old Testament somewhere.
It is. Cassandra says they could have a Kingdom Hall in Pervert Park.
Ooh, they so could.
Because the cult doesn't speak against pedophiles because it would hurt Jehovah's name.
They could.
Yep. It says they'll do a local needs on if a brother admits to looking at Playboy, but when it comes to a offender, radio silence.
Yeah. They're obsessed with what they believe is sexual misconduct. And the scary thing is, essentially, pedophilia is not sexual misconduct to them. They don't. That's not even on their radar.
Lula Bell says, "Welcome to the Pervert Hills congregation." Kingdom Hall in Pervert Park.
And the crazy thing is we don't know. There could very well be a Kingdom Hall right around the corner from these people, where they pack up and get ready to go stand next to carts.
Yeah, but that's pretty much it. It's just we wanted to bring it out because you see there's other cults like Jehovah's Witnesses who claim they have the truth, have the same internal problems, and nothing is done about it. The FBI is investigating them now, but they need to do it with Jehovah's Witnesses and every other cult where people are being harmed and it's being swept under the rug under the name of religion.
But the
Period.
FBI can't do anything about it because if you're talking about the American FBI, they're under the same Constitution. The Constitution states freedom of religion. These people are allowed to have the culture
there's a
that they have, but
where you're agreeing to violating human rights as well. Period.
Which means that they would have to do something against the religion, which in America is so freaking rare.
Exactly.
That they're going to actually do something against a religion.
Right.
Like a religion, you free. Like that's the problem. That's where cults are so dangerous. In Russia, at least they're cracking down on cults and they're making them illegal and things like that. But you can have a religion, but not an extreme cult. In America, oh my God, you can have any freaking thing. You could be a snake, one of the people that believe in handling snakes and jumping around, and it's legal to have that sort of thing.
It's ridiculousness. But,
so yeah. You got Jehovah's Witnesses you got the snake charmers, where Jehovah's Witnesses are pedophile charmers, where they dance around with the pedophiles.
Me and Bernie going to sleep.
So that is all for tonight.
I'm gonna grab Bernie and I'm going to bed.
You guys
I wake up very early.
we'll post this so it'll start from the beginning if you missed the beginning. And that is it. X-Wall Kill Bethelite signing out, and Serenity also. We're sleepy.
Yep, there's Bernie. He was sleeping already. Say bye.
Bernie's looking at her like, what's going on?
His all hanging out. Bye.
All right. You guys have a good night.